Okay.
That's my fault. I'm sorry, guys.
Do we need to redo anything?
Probably.
No, you haven't repealed your rule that requires your minutes are still in written format, so you're good.
Okay. So are we going to have both today then, written for the first?
We're gonna have to keep the written rules until we fully repeal
Yeah.
them. And this is to propose the repeal, so we still have a ways to go for it.
All right, well, I for one am in favor of this rule. Are we ready to motion?
Yeah, we need a motion.
I so move to repeal 681.6 as written in the board.
Dr. Taylor, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Stubblefield. All in favor of repealing the requirement for written minutes, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And carries. Thank you. Again, going in reverse order, 2I 681.205, the schedule of sanctions. Patrick, can you kind of explain what you did here?
Yeah, one of the issues that's come up is every single time since what we did was we took sort of the policy and then we implemented in the rule, but in the policy it had reiterated all the same rule language. So any single time we make a change to a rule of practice or an application rule that's a standard that we have to enforce, we then have to change it to match up exactly. And it's causing a lot of issues where we get behind on certain things. Honestly, all those schedule of sanction rule needs to be is an actual schedule of sanctions, what the rule is and what that sanction is. And so taking out all of the reiteration of the rule language in that middle column is essentially what I've proposed on there. And that way you won't have to amend this rule unless you really want to change the discipline, the recommended sanction for that particular rule violation. So this rule won't have to be reopened again and every single time. It causes a whole lot of problems because you'll have multiple rules open and you can't have this rule, multiple proposals of this rule. So it really will cause a lot of problems if we don't do something like this is what I want to point out. And the other part of it too is down on 681.41, I'm sorry, 681.91, I believe it's L 681.91L. That one is fully deleted from it, or it's proposed to be deleted because that corresponds with the proposals that we sent to the council last go around. So that's the only other thing that is actually substantively being changed on this proposal.
Patrick, so essentially we're just taking the language out. We're keeping all the same discipline.
Correct.
Okay, sanctions.
Other than that 681.91L. Yeah.
Patrick, I would imagine TCA and other stakeholders are probably going to have pushback on this. Can you clarify for the public where this will be stored, where the matrix will be published, that it'll still be accessible, that people will still be able to see it, etc.?
Right. The matrix will still be in the rule, and the rule will still exist. It'll still be a rule. What will happen is just the chart will get, so essentially I created a version of this just to see how it'll affect it. And it changes the rule from 10 pages long to 5 pages.
Right.
So I mean, it shortens it immensely, but it essentially has all the same information. It's just, if it's rule 681.41V, it'll still have L5 right next to it. So you'll know that's the level of sanction. And that's honestly really all it needs to be. That's the information you need. All of this other language is duplicative. And as point of comparison, if this board goes this way, it won't be the only board with that sort of a schedule of sanctions.
I agree, and I'm on board with it. I'm all for efficiency and simplicity. All I'm saying is that as soon as we publish this, we're going to get 800 public comments saying, bring back the matrix.
Yeah.
The rule number and the action are staying there. The only thing we're taking out is the rule language.
Yeah.
So it's still.
Yeah, if you
Somebody's
want to
got to
have a
repeat that.
policy version of this where it had some sort of reiterated language, that's something that potentially could be done. But we don't want to have it in the rule because then we have to do all the rulemaking procedures to make any particular changes. And that's where the difficulty is being created.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't want to read 800 comments saying where's the matrix. That's all I'm saying. So we can, when we move forward with this, which I think we should, if we could be very clear with the public that the penalty matrix still exists, it's not going away. So I don't know if you can comment that.
Yeah, we're required by
with the
statute to
proposal.
have one.
Yeah.
So we have to have one. So-
Well, I know that.
Okay.
I'm worried about the 800 people that are going to comment that do not know that.
Got it.
How do we communicate that to them clearly on the website or elsewhere to avoid a barrage of comments saying we're getting rid of the matrix?
Yeah, I can try to be a little clearer in the preamble when it's published and try to explain that better. So.
And I'll agree and co-sign with Dr. Taylor, just with my 5 minutes having been on the board. Christina probably can attest that I've gotten a multitude of questions about a lot of things and complaints about things as if they were fact and they're just on our agenda for discussion. And so I agree, the clearer the language, the less our inboxes will be blowed up.
Yeah, every time Daryl puts something on the agenda, like let's move to 5,000 hours because I just want to stir up stuff, I get 80 phone calls, just FYI. So we're all on the same page here.
I'm here and I can hear you.
I know you can.
I'm gonna go back and listen to the lawyer.
Dr. Taylor, you get all those phone calls because my personal voicemail has your number on it. When anybody contacts me, I just send them all to you.
Not surprised. Not surprised. I'm gonna start signing you up for spam mails. Any spam I can find is coming your way.
Okay. These are good concerns expressed by Dr. Taylor and Dr. Amuna. Are you guys, are your concerns alleviated by Patrick's explanation of a clearer introduction of what we've done?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you feel as though we need with some additional publicity help?
Well, I think BHEC in general would probably benefit from a PR firm. But aside from that, I don't really know there's much we can do.
I concur.
Patrick, where would the additional language go?
I mean, we go in the preamble and the explanation of the rule. So when they would actually see where it's published and they come to comment, it would go in that publication. It says, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it. We'll also, when we send it to BHEC for proposal, we can also put in that comment section a more lengthy explanation up on that top part. Currently, there's nothing there, I think right now, so I'll make sure to add that there, and that will be published again at BHEC and then published again in the register.
Okay. I view that as any additional preamble language is non-substantive. So can we still vote on this rule change even with your language additions?
Yeah, it's really just the language that we're voting on that we can wordsmith the preamble and the explanation of it. That's fine.
Okay.
And Patrick, I'm curious, is this a rule change or are we simply just, because we're not changing any of the actions to the specific rules, we're just condensing the chart?
Yeah, it is a rule change because
Okay.
we're making a change to the rule, but it is actually not a substantive rule change because there's no change other than that one rule that 68191L. That's a substantive change, but all the other stuff makes no substantive change to it. So, but we would need to propose it and go through the normal rulemaking process as a rule change because we can't just make non-substantive changes on our own. We're required to follow the notice and publication requirements to do that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Stubblefield? Okay.
Okay, we can still vote on this today, but before I ask for a motion, does anyone else have any other questions or concerns?
The 68191, is that settled, or do we need to settle that first before we do this?
No, that's, if you look at the next 8B in agenda item, so 91, well, 681, all the 681, 6812, 68191, and 6893, those are what was sent to the council previously to propose. And the change in 91 that's being made in the schedule of sanctions here, that's already going to the register right now. So this is a catch up to correct if we go with the proposed change that's being proposed there. That's why that needs to be made today to follow up on that. Does that, I hope that explains it. It's already that change is already being proposed. So this just didn't coincide with that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion on the rule change? Okay, thank you, Ms. Campanone. Do I have a second? Is there?
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Okay, all in favor of the changes to 681.205, the schedule of sanctions, please raise your hand or say aye. So we can see you. Ms. Hall, okay, we got you. All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on to letter I, 681.83, academic course content. I think we'll start off with a little background on why we're tackling this. You'll want to weigh in on why this has come up and what we're working on.
Yeah, so I can jump in on that one. We have a lot of applications that come in for out-of-state individuals and in-state individuals from different universities, different degree backgrounds, and they're missing courses. So the big thing is we want to try and see if there's a way that the board can help us streamline the application process related to the core course requirements, possibly have a certain number of required core course requirements, and then have a section of electives. This can allow for more specialty areas for applicants or for licensees, to go down that path. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. I know it is a big issue, so not sure, how some of you board members would like to, how you feel about it.
Yeah,
Rules-
Christina.
Rules
Oh,
Committee
go ahead.
has- Sorry, Dr. Taylor, I'm about to hand it off to you, but you know how I like to opine. The Rules Committee has
Oh.
a pretty deep dive on this at this point, so I am going to ask some of our professional members on the Rules Committee to kind of give a little bit more detail on what we're considering, what we're trying to accomplish. So, Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Just to clarify the population this impacts, first, if they have a degree in counseling, they already have the Disney Fast Pass, right? So we do not look at the transcripts. So if the degree is counseling, which ironically Disney just disbanded the Fast Pass. So, so they get that, right? So staff does not look at the transcript, so it doesn't matter. We're just trusting the academic system to say that this is a degree in counseling. The accrediting agencies are holding them accountable to ensure that this is in fact a degree in counseling. This impacts really counseling related degrees, which means a degree in psychology, a degree in marriage and family therapy, a degree in something that's in the space of mental health care. Obviously, if they have a degree that's not related to counseling or in counseling, they just wouldn't qualify unless they met all of these requirements, right? So that's the population this is really impacting. We looked definitely at NBCC, we looked at the NCE exam, we looked at KCREB standards, all those things. And the objective here was not to remove anything from the educational process, but rather give professors the freedom and students the freedom to build the degree that they wanted while still inside of the scope of what we need. So it's not to let more people in or make it easier. It's just to allow people, and again, this really only applies to those that don't have a degree in counseling. If you have a master's degree in counseling, community counseling, whatever, like you're in, that's good. This really impacts those that got a degree in marriage and family therapy because they were passionate about couples counseling or family counseling and wanted to pursue that deeper level of knowledge in that specialty. I, for one, had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still kind of don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I know that some people do. Some people at 5 years old know that they want to be a therapist and know exactly what type of theory they want to study. That's fine, right? So this is kind of for those people that know that stuff. So we're not really handcuffing them saying that, well, I know that you're never going to go into private practice, but you need to take a class on professional orientation. I know that you're never going to work with couples or groups, but you still need to have a class in there. The arguments that I've seen really are, well, we're setting them up for failure against the NCE. Well, I mean, if they don't want to have a class in group therapy, that's fine, as long as they can still pass the NCE, right? So they can still study for it and know the same stuff. So that's kind of the thought process. That's what we came into this with. Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Janie, did you want to add anything?
Just to echo what you're saying, we're not removing any requirements. We're just shifting them from, that cafeteria plan, so you can choose what you want on your plate. But the fundamentals are all still in place.
I've read the comments, and having been around the university for years, but more importantly, I'm on the national committee for NBCC that's revising the NCE exam. And that's the biggest question I have. That exam is built around the 8 areas of KCREB. And I think they're going to have trouble on that exam if they haven't selected the right classes. Now, maybe that's not my issue, although I feel it is. Being a professor, I want to see everyone that should pass. But I do think that the new NCE exam, I've seen it. There's just no doubt that it's aligned with the 8 areas of KCREB. And you take out one of these courses, and those questions are on there. I mean, just be sure you know what you're doing, because I have real concerns.
Yeah, and we appreciate those concerns, Dr. Bradley. I share them as well, but I also know that it's kind of the student's responsibility to study and learn the coursework and learn the degree. Just obligating that they take a course doesn't mean that they're going to soak up the material and do well, right? I think it does set them up more for success, and it would be intelligent for them to take those courses to set themselves up for success. But if a student feels confident that they will pass the exam with or without group counseling, and they would prefer to take 3 credits of something else that they are passionate about, say existential psychotherapy, like myself, be wary of a school that offers that course, though, by the way. I think there's enough people that want to take it. So if they want to do that, why not give them the freedom to do it?
Dr. Amuna, I'm sorry, Dr. Bradley, go ahead. Dr. Amuna, I'll get to you next.
Okay, something came up on the screen. The only thing that I would caution us is, as well as I do, that faculty are viewed as the experts in these areas. And I'm not sure that students know how important a specific course is to their career, because number one, they haven't practiced in that career yet. And from my perspective of several years in a university, I really question if a student knows the importance of a course or if they would select that course based on other criteria. So I'm going to stop this. I'm not for this, but on the other hand, I think I've expressed my concerns about it, and it's concerns for students passing the exam, making sure that people know that this exam is not the easiest exam to pass. And we don't have the inter-item reliability yet on this new revision of the exam, but I certainly don't think it's going to be any easier than the existing one. And those would be my concerns. I don't think students always know which courses are most important.
Yeah, and Dr. Bradley, I would definitely agree with you on that topic as well. My thought would be just that it's not, in my mind at least, it's not this body's place to tell a student how to prepare for an exam. That would be the academic reach of our profession, right? The professors to caution them and walk them through their degree plan and prepare them for the exam. I think our place is to set minimal standards. The courses are still in the bracket. They're still there. We're still saying we want you to take them. We're just giving them more freedom to choose which to take. And then we're still holding to the exam. So if they can't pass the exam, they still can't get in. They still don't get a license. So the safety net's still there. We're still essentially acting as that guardian.
Okay, Dr. Amuna, you also have the academic background. Curious on your thoughts on this. You're on mute still.
I'll say that I completely understand and empathize with Dr. Bradley as a professor in the Masters of Marriage and Family and Therapy program and a professor in the Masters of Clinical Mental Health program. But I am leaning more towards Dr. Taylor in the sense that from my probation officer days, I like that we use the language must complete 5 of the following, the courses that we've moved. We don't say that you should or that we recommend. We say that you still must complete 5 of the 9 or so courses that are there. So we're essentially saying instead of you having these courses in your core, you still have to have them, but you get to choose out of the 9, 5. You must have them. So that's Dr. Bradley, that's what gives me a little bit of solace in that we don't recommend or we don't say you should. We say that you must have the courses that we've removed from core down to elective. You must have 5 of the 9. So they're still going to be forced to take the classes. They just have a little bit of leadway and wiggle room out of 4 of the 9 classes. So that gives me a little bit of solace that we don't have professionals completely unprepared. And again, my mindset is that if you are in a traditional counseling program, like me, I didn't have an option in a counseling program. I didn't have an option of the courses that I took because my courses were designed to be CACREP accredited to prepare me for the NCE. But if I were in rehabilitative counseling or another non-traditional counseling track, this guideline that we're proposing would give me a little bit more freedom. And again, ultimately that NCE would fall on me. So I have solace in that we use strong language of must complete as opposed to should or recommend. That gives me solace as a professional and as a professor.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just for clarification too, there are still 8 courses in the core. So we're not saying all the courses. Staff has just specifically pinpointed language that has given us struggles with, again, this very specific population, which is a related degree. So not somebody with a counseling degree, right? So vast majority of the students that are coming in already have that counseling degree. So we're not even looking at their transcripts, right? We're just trusting the university to do its job with a counseling degree. We're talking about related field. We're talking about people coming in from coursework from other states, most usually, that have, people come up with different names for stuff in different states. I think Texas does it the right way. I think everyone else should do it the way we do it. But, New Jersey disagrees with us. They like to name things differently, so that gives staff a problem, specifically when we're looking at like a second ethics course. Most degrees don't offer that, don't have it. Most degrees call it something else. So it just makes it difficult for staff in those areas.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Dr. Bradley, I think you absolutely come from a good place. You have some good insight. You're part of a review committee that is able, again, to look at the actual exam to see, the questions and maybe the percentage of people that are passing or not passing. And so I think that that's how I understand it. You know exactly what's going on. So, I do respect that. You're right. I don't ever want to obligate anyone to take a course. And you're right. We have to set minimal standards and give them the opportunity to be able to select what they'd like to take. And Dr. Taylor, you're right. At the end of the day, you take your exam, you prepare. The responsibility falls on the individual in terms of, the courses and the time that you put into it and study guides and so on and so forth. So, Christina, question for you on the most recent data. What percentage of people do we still have that are not passing the exam? Do we have anything most recent?
I haven't looked recently. So you're asking though, what's the percentage of people not passing the national exam? I haven't looked recently, but I don't think there's that many, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. The other thing also is, of course, we've got all kinds of universities throughout the state of Texas that, are offering their counseling programs. And I wish we could say that everybody had the same style, the same approach, and that everybody was graduating with the same knowledge and preparation for the exam, but that's just not true. And so as a board, we do have that responsibility to ensure that we do have the minimal standards. And then that responsibility is also on a university to prepare their students. And then the responsibility is on the student to prepare. So there's a lot of different layers that I look at. So that's it.
Board, a lot of our discussion in Rules Committee when we discussed this was what should be a core class and what should be an elective class. So I'd like to hear from y'all about, do you have any specific concerns about something got moved over to elective and you think it should be core, or vice versa, something currently is listed as elective, but you think it should be in core. So let me know if you have any concerns about one of the specific topics, because that's what a lot of our debate was. What goes into what group? But Dr. Muna, go ahead.
Just from looking through, the one that brings me angst that's an elective is the professional orientation. To me, that's kind of like the crux of, how should you behave as a counseling professional? What is our bearings? And so that brings me a little bit of angst, especially if individuals are coming in from related degrees and then they want to do private practice. And then my concern is potential ethical issues, but we have people with PhDs who still have ethical issues. And so that's the only one that gives me a little bit of angst. I would be on the different side of the fence if the psychopathology was an elective. I would be on a different side of the fence if, let me go back through, it was something else that I saw. A psychopathology and appraisal were electives, because essentially you have to know the DSM if you're going to be in this field. And so I'm glad that that's not in the elective with regard to appraisals. You have to know the DSM-5. So that gives me solace, but my concern is the professional orientation. And I'm still trying to make peace with that one in the sense that everyone might not go into private practice. They may just go into a teaching field and they want the licensure while they're teaching. So it's not day-to-day counseling work that they're doing with the LPC.
Okay, is there something in the core group that you would replace it with? Or would you?
Hold on, Steve. Can I address that real quick?
Mhm.
Thank you, Dr. Amon. I appreciate that concern. That course specifically was listed in there because of its name.
Mhm.
It's the logistics of the name coming from related courses typically are not offering a course that equals that by name or by syllabi. So while they might have something, it's typically called something very different, and it is very difficult for staff to match.
Okay.
So it's a challenge in that regard, which is why it was specifically put down there to give staff kind of the freedom to say, okay, well, they have psychopathology, not professional orientation, so that's okay. So that's why we put it down there. I too had reservations originally in the meeting, in our committee meeting for that one as well, because I do know it's so important. But that's why it was specifically because of the language. And remember, again, this is only for related fields, right? So if they're already in the counseling degree, then they already have the counseling degree. So this is, again, a subset, a smaller population of applicants that are typically coming from out of state or an MFT program or a social work program or a psychology program where they have this material. It's typically just, it's given in a different way.
Gotcha. And again, if we had the word should or recommend, I would be on a completely different bandwagon. So I just want to put that out in the atmosphere. The fact that we say must have gives me solace. Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Patrick.
And I just wanted to ask, or maybe point out in B7, there's counselor ethics. Would that address a little bit of your concerns, Dr. Amuna? It's under the required courses. It says counselor ethics, the professional, ethical, and legal aspect of providing counseling services. So that will be a required course. So I mean, it may not fully address everything in C6, but some aspects potentially, hopefully.
It does help, and I'll use the term. It's essentially, to me, counseling orientation or relates to, for lack of a better phrase, it's like bedside manner. You know, in a medical program, it's teaching you bedside manner on how to interact. And so that was my concern. I'm glad the legal aspect is in there. So it's like, don't do these things so you don't go to jail. But it's that professional orientation really gives you the root of do no harm, besides the harm that can get you arrested. But it does give me solace that the ethical part is there. To answer your question, Patrick, yes.
Dr. Bradley, go ahead.
I agree with what Dr. Amana said. It gives me concern too. And I can only speak, I've been at 3 universities, and the professional orientation goes beyond in all the universities I've been, and it really implants in the student what it means to be a counselor. It goes into professional identity. That is somewhat covered in an ethics course, but an ethics course is more around moral principles, you know, Kitchener's moral principles and so forth. Professional identity is kind of like they're introduced to the profession. And for me, people who are coming like from an equivalent degree area, that's something they should be introduced to. I understand what Dr. Taylor is saying, that it creates confusion. The title does. And maybe that's something we need to work on. But I think that course is kind of the groundbreaking course and is a foundation for future courses, because what is so scary if they don't know what counseling's all about and they think counseling is psychology, They may be first or second cousins, but they're not identical twins. And I think that's important for students to get that orientation right in the beginning.
Dr. Taylor, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I totally agree with you, Dr. Bradley and Dr. Moon. I do. Again, it's kind of like a warm blanket in some degree because staff just looks at the title, so professional orientation. So if the school offers a course that says professional orientation and the syllabus looks like it's, somewhat in the realm of what it should be, then it goes through. We don't send police officers into the classroom and say, let me see your syllabus to make sure that you're orienting these kids properly, while I agree that I do like the professional orientation, I prefer that it be in there. I also know that this is creating a great deal of frustration and most likely causing arguably more harm to the public by not allowing more professionals into the field when we are, vastly approaching a mental health crisis.
Christina, statistically, how many applicants is this impacting?
I think it's quite a few. I mean, it's helped that if they have a counseling degree, we don't have to look at all the coursework, but most of the others we do. I just added Stephanie Woodruff is joining us. She's one of the licensing unit managers. So Stephanie, if you'd like to speak on that a little bit more.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat
Okay.
the premise for me. I was doing HR stuff with Monty.
Okay.
Woodsy, just give us your argument from the other day about, the other thing we were talking about. It's the same.
Oh, okay. So this is about the not meeting the various areas, the core areas kind of a thing, and the proposal to move some things to like your elective statuses rather than be required. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
Of course.
Okay, so like we have, we receive a lot of people who want their LPC license. Some of them come from different degree programs kind of a thing, and I'm not so worried about those. I'm just like, the requirements are different, take courses. But we also get applicants who may have older education or whose coursework doesn't quite meet the requirements. Like they didn't take a second psychopathology course and they want to use like grief and rehab counseling to meet that abnormal behavior. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not abnormal behavior. And so we end up going round and round with them. And basically staff uses a lot of time to make these arguments with people, and it goes back and forth. And we've kicked things like all the way up the chain to you guys to review, just to come back and tell them, no, they're right. Just do what you got to do. So like we have one gentleman right now who's missing 4 core areas. He has a doctorate in education, and he is just really adamant that, he has met these requirements, and, what we've looked at doesn't meet it. Even though he would go under the 2017, the prior to 2017 requirements, because his education is older than that, or he started his degree program prior to that. It's not, he's still missing there was an appraisal and assessment. There was an abnormal human behavior that, we didn't find any evidence of. And, it's just some of these folks, particularly with the professional orientation and the second ethics course kind of thing that's required. There's some discussion, and what I tell the applicants is what I have heard from the board over the years, that professional orientation is not just ethics, and it encompasses a broader field of education in being a counselor than just ethics. And so that second ethics course that they take, great, we'll use that for ethics, but they still have to have a professional orientation course. So it's just a lot of staff time spent arguing back and forth. Did that answer what you guys are looking for or asking?
Okay, so, and my question was, how many people is this impacting? So this is the same thing we were talking about the other day, and
Right,
that was
but
4/1000%. And so that's such a
That's a
small
different,
percent.
that's a different one. A lot of our LPC applicants who come in with a degree that isn't counseling, but is counseling related, and that could be counseling psychology, that could be, education, whatever it is. These are LPC applicants, and, we review their stuff and they don't meet it. And it's not just the small group that we were talking about in that particular meeting where it was focused on that one degree program. This is a broader number. So I end up doing this for several people. For LPC, I'm not so worried about MFT. So LPC, I end up doing it like at least for 2 applicants a week, who are LPC applicants, not coming in with other stuff. They're LPC applicants.
And this is an issue that we've always had. This isn't new.
Yeah. This isn't new. It's just more annoying right now. I don't know why. It is eating up a lot more staff time, and it is causing us delays. And I don't want to delay people, and I want to get people into the field, and I want to get people licensed. And it's nice to be able to say yes to people, because usually all I get to say is no. So it's nice to be able to say yes to people, but it's frustrating to go back and forth with them. And they're like, well, what about this course? What about that course? And I'm like, dude, we already applied that to this area, because it's that area, not this.
And so this is back to this is some individuals who just don't want to follow the rules.
Indeed.
Okay.
And Ms. Stubblefield and
Hold
Dr.
on. It's not so much that they don't want to follow the rules. It's that the degree that they obtain doesn't meet the requirements. It's just not about disobedience of the rule.
But if the degree doesn't meet minimum standards of what our field is, and I mean, I think that's what Dr. Bradley and Dr. Moon and others have said is, there's some, if I like this person, I guess, who had a doctorate in education, if I want to go be a teacher, I know I'm going to have to take some teaching classes. And so if they've been a teacher and they want to come be a counselor, they're going to need to take some counseling classes. And so.
Yeah, that still very well may be the case. We're not solving this one individual's problem. I'm not really interested in his problem. We're just saying, by and large, a lot of these people that come in from out of state or even in our state, this particular degree, this particular course, its name, it's the way it's presented, is problematic. Again, we're not getting rid of it. We're just moving it from the core to the, to the salad bar, I guess is what Daryl likes to call it. So the optional courses, they still have to have X of the list there. So we're not getting rid of it. We're not making it go away or anything like that. We're just adding it into that grouping of counseling related. And again, remember, this only applies to that limited population, a smaller population, not if it comes from a counseling program. If it comes from a counseling program and that program doesn't even offer professional orientation, we don't even look at it. Remember that. So it's not everyone applying. It is a subset of people that are applying that are eating up an abnormally large amount of time for staff.
Woodsy, if we move this to the, optional, I don't know what we're calling this, the salad bar list, how many applicants does that then help move forward?
I am not exactly certain. I would imagine several. Would benefit from this quite a bit. And when I say several, I'm thinking probably 25% of the ones that are being held up right now. I mean, I could be wrong on that. I don't have actual figures. But excuse me, it is a time-honored problem. And so
More than a nominal amount, Woodsy.
yeah, more than a nominal amount, it would help.
Okay.
Dr. Bradley, I think you had a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I come back. I don't disagree with some of the statements, but here's where I'm coming from. We are representing a profession of counseling, and people coming in with a related degree. And I'm sure on this, these are the people who do not have the groundwork for the understanding of the professional identity and so forth of the profession that they're entering. If they had that information, I don't think people are trying to cheat the system or anything. I think when we tell them they don't have the credentials or the courses, what they do next is, how can I take what I have and make it work? And what I'm saying, there are certain fundamental courses that are your gateway courses, and that you need that background, and professional orientation is one. We're sending them into a profession that they need to know. Now, I can't tell you what other universities cover, but we cover the format of counseling in that class in terms of professional identity. We cover ACA, it's 19 divisions. We cover information about TCA. We touch on ethics, but what we really, our theme in that course is what it's like to be a counselor. And what's scary, we get transfer students from other fields in our program all the time. And what they try to do is to stamp what they've learned in another program and make it apply to counseling. And counseling is distinct, as I said earlier, from some of the other professions. Granted, it's akin to, but they need to know what counseling is and what counseling isn't. And it's this basic course that gives them that foundation. We don't want frustrated such and such professionals out there. We want counselors who feel competent and know what the profession is about. And that's the course that they get it in.
Tim has a question. Tim, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I do want to point out that the individuals coming out of programs, whether it be counseling or counseling related, don't go immediately into being an independent practitioner. They are under supervision for their while they're an associate. So much of this, what it is to be a counselor, although it's great to get that coursework, is actually learned in the arena of being an associate. Additionally, the proposal that's on the floor here is exactly the way it's done in Oklahoma. So this is not something that is a offshoot or a one-off or something that other states don't do. You know, so I think that while the concerns that are being expressed are valid, without a doubt, I don't think that this is a proposal that runs counter to the protection of the citizens of the state, which is the main mandate of this board.
Well, Tim, you lost me as soon as you mentioned Oklahoma.
Figured I would. I was gonna. I haven't checked
so well.
I figured you'd like that as well.
You were going so well.
Dr. Taylor, you were saying part of the problem or part of the issue is the name of this course. One of the things that we did on under B2 with the psychopathology abnormal human behavior is we had some clarification. Maybe that's what we need to look at in that professional orientation, is if this is a name thing. And I've just been out of the academic for too many decades to understand what the courses are being named now. Because again, when I was there, it was abnormal human behavior, and we figured out psychopathology and abnormal human behavior are the same thing. So is that maybe what we need to look at is some of the naming language?
Yeah, that could absolutely be a different approach we could take. We settled on this specific approach in the committee, I think, because of these reasons. But we can definitely go back and re-look at that. I would, if we were to do that, I would argue probably for maybe a less descriptive course to give staff more freedom, because I think that's part of the problem is, staff has to apply this four-line little mini paragraph here
Sure.
to an entire syllabus for a course from a university in Arkansas, whose counseling program might not be very big or might be very focused in, something else. And it doesn't have counseling in the name, mental health, community support personnel or something like that. And so that when they have to apply this legal aspects of practice. So did the course cover legal access of practice? And if it didn't, then they can't apply it. If it doesn't say that on the syllabus, they can't apply it. And that's part of the problem they're running into. While I respect and appreciate Dr. Bradley's point of view, I think it is a bit of an oversimplification to say that these people coming from out of state or from other related fields have no idea what it means to be a therapist or a counselor. So I don't want to flood the state with a bunch of ill-equipped, unprepared individuals. But I kind of also argue that every associate is unprepared. I was very unprepared as an associate. There's only so much education we can give somebody in a graduate program. And the more we add to it, the harder it gets for them to get out of these programs without taking on massive amount of student debt, which takes us into a whole different world of problems. All I'm advocating for is just the which we discussed in the committee, which is why we brought it out here, was to move that course down to give a lot more freedom to others. I'm not opposed to leaving it as a required course, but I do think we would need to adjust some of the definition of it at least.
Let me clarify.
Yeah.
Let me clarify something. Apparently I gave the wrong impression. I think some people coming in from other areas and so forth make excellent counselors. I was not trying to imply that they don't know what counseling is, but I'm saying until they get that beginning course, and that's true of our beginning students, they really get from that course that professional identity that is not covered in any of the other courses in that same way. And that I'm not saying that someone coming in from an equivalent field doesn't know what counseling is about. I'm just saying we need to assure that anyone coming into the profession has that basic grounding, that basic foundation, so that they know what they're coming into and what the field is about. I'm amazed at times that people do not realize that that fields are akin but are not identical, and that they need that groundwork to see that counseling, for example, is not based on a typical medical model, which some of the other professions are. And they get that in that orientation course, at least they do. I've been at 3 universities and that's where they've received that. So I'm not saying, Chris, and let me clarify that I think that they don't know. I'm just saying this course assures us that they will know, because some of our students, when they first come into that course, they don't know either. They think they want to be a counselor and they may stay in that area, but that's where they get their foundation for counseling.
Go ahead, Dr. Luna.
I know we're discussing coursework, but something that came to my mind was with regard to Dr. Bradley. And I think Janie Subbleful mentioned it earlier, with regard to once they're finished with their program, We are not changing the practicum requirements, right? I know this is courses, but they still have that requirement for practicum. They still have that requirement for supervision before full licensure. So it is my hope as a supervisor in other states that what they may not have gotten in that professional orientation course, they get through their practicum and they get while they're under supervision as an LPC intern. And so that gives us a little bit more trickle down of, you may not have gotten it here. We hope that you pick that class if it stays on the elective. But then the onus, I think someone mentioned earlier is, Brenda, is that it's on your supervisor, it's on your practicum to make sure that when you're in the field in a practice state, you're learning your professional bearings, you're learning your interactions, you're learning that identity, which is why that practicum part is required as well. We don't just say, here's the book knowledge, because you could be a great test taker and then have horrible, again, bedside manner. And so that practicum part is going to kind of help us out by not having this be a mandate of a course as opposed to it being an elective. That practicum requirement, that supervision requirement is going to be a buffer for the people who may not get that introduction that Dr. Bradley is talking about, that they're going to have it before they see us again for full licensure. I just want to make sure that that's correct.
I think so.
Right.
Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
Steve or Mr. Chair, are you ready to, are we entertaining motions here? Do we have something else to discuss?
I did, I'm paying a lot of attention to Dr. Bradley and Dr. Amuna's comments because they come from the academic background. So Dr. Amuna, do you have any other objections to this proposed change other than your concerns over moving C6 professional orientation from core to elective? Do you have any other concerns over the changes?
That was the only one that made me squeamish, to just, in all honesty. Everything else I'm at peace with, if it's not chosen by a potential applicant as one of their electives. But that one, again, as Dr. Bradley mentioned, that's, if you put it in military terms, that is the basic training for our field. You go through basic training and then you have different AITs that you go through different tracks, but everyone comes through that core as a clinician. And again, it's just my hope that if we do decide to make the change, that we rely heavily on our practicum and our supervision to tell us that it was a good change. It was a decent change to make, because they're still going to get that, except not from a class. They're going to get it in real life from practical application with that practicum and with that supervisor. It gives me a little bit of solace. And it doesn't mean that they won't take it. It just means that it's one of the 5 of 9 that they are allowed to take. So everyone may still take that course. It's just that we don't mandate that particular one. So it's not going away. Again, that gives me solace with whoever did the legal word that you must take 5 of these. It gives me solace in that, but it does make me a little squeamish. But all the other ones I'm fine with.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bradley, the same question. Is your only concern over this the move of professional orientation to elective?
Well, I had some concern about the career as the course, but it just worries me that there are certain fundamental courses that are now on a menu that they select. And yet, if you look at university and their course requirements, those individuals, if you go back for years, have selected those fundamental courses. And KCREP has come up with the 8 areas, and career and group are in those areas. So I'm a strong supporter of those 8 core areas.
Dr. Bradley,
And I've already expressed that, and I've expressed my concern. If you look at what's required by universities in their curriculum, not all, but a large percentage of universities are following those 8 core areas. And I definitely would want to see all of those 8 core areas as required courses. But you know, I just don't, I just think people going out into our profession, we want them to be the best that they can be, and we want them to serve the citizens of Texas in the most successful way possible. And I've no doubt that's what the committee has in mind too. I just differ on some of this.
Dr. Taylor, did you want to respond to that?
Well, I appreciate that. I do. And I think I applaud KCREP and all the other universities for striving for best practice. I think that's their role. That's their place, is to strive for best practice, while ours is to set minimal standards. So I want to continue to encourage students and professors to be the best they can be. And I want to try to be the best I can be. And I want all the programs to be the best that they can be. But I just got to remind myself of our position, which is to set minimal standards. If those programs teach all those courses, that's great. If they offer them all, that's great. But again, this does not apply to a counseling program. If the degree is in counseling, none of these apply. This discussion does not apply because it's already in the transcripts. It's already good. We're only talking about the subset of related field and how we apply this to those transcripts. That's it.
And Dr. Taylor, and actually, Dr. Amuna, thank you so much for giving me that visual. That helped me so much, that basic training comment. And actually, in light of that, I'm going to agree with you guys that maybe we need to go back and let's move professional orientation, but work on some of the naming language of what are some of those equivalent courses that are coming from out of state universities or something that will help staff to be able to identify or flesh out better what professional orientation is, but move that back to core. If that's basic training on that from our academic professionals on the board here, moving that back to core and looking at how do we then help staff with better language. And I would welcome any ideas on what are those courses named from some of those universities.
If I could speak to that, typically they're named professional ethics. So that's the problem that we encounter, is that we've got two things that are required, but one of them duplicates the name. And so if we've got to require ethics, we also have to require professional orientation, and a lot of the other programs lump them both into one. We're at an impasse. And this isn't about people who, are going to otherwise be problematic in the field. These are people who are, in all other instances, are going to be competent professionals. So that's one of the problems that we encounter and why it's listed where it is. So I understand the concern about somebody not getting the basic information, but keep in mind that there's also the practicum, there's also the supervised experience, and there's also the NCE exam. So my point on that would be that it's a problem for us, for these individuals, with the nomenclature of ethics and professional orientation, because up until this 2017 switchover, staff had been able to accept ethics as professional orientation.
Tim, that's actually fantastic perspective. Thank you. I forgot that we kind of created this problem. And so we're really just kind of going back and adjusting a problem that we created a few years ago. So we're not really changing a whole lot here. We're just kind of unbreaking this issue.
Go ahead, Dr. Bradley.
In response to what Mr. Spear said, I agree. Some universities, for example, get around this by just having a course called Introduction to Mental Health Counseling. That's pretty typical in the field. So, maybe professional orientation is not the best name. And I agree that starting in 2017, we have created some problems, but now I think we need to find a solution to back out of that problem. And what we're talking about here is just, you know, most professions. I know when my son was in medical school, they had an introduction to the medical profession. Many counseling programs have an introduction to counseling. Maybe that's what we need to have staff to look for instead of the term professional orientation.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. We actually do often look to see if they don't have the professional orientation and they've got the ethics. We do look at the course descriptions and syllabi for intro if they have that on their transcript to see if that course meets the requirements for professional orientation. We're not just focused necessarily on the name of the course, but we do look at the course description and compare that to the academic content that's in the rules to make sure those topics are covered. So if intro to counseling includes, you know, talking about their identity as a counselor and their professional organizations and you know, some ethics and whatnot, yeah, we'll accept that as meeting that core requirement. If, however, it's like, you know, this is just a general intro to counseling and we're going to talk about your family of origin and how you deal with those issues, I'm like, yep, nope, that's not it. So it's it is dependent on the school to include those topics in the coursework to meet the requirements. And if it doesn't, then we don't accept it. And if it does, we do. We're not just focused on their name.
Well, certainly I agree with that. I think another way that you can tell what the course is about is what textbook has been adopted. You know, a textbook, the title of the textbook often tells me what I need to know, but certainly the table of contents. So in that course syllabus, there should be a description of what is the textbook used. And, you know, and if the textbook they've adopted, now I'm going to give you a far-fetched example, is the DSM-5. Well, we know that's not professional orientation. So, you know, I've looked at, one of the things I do is look at transcripts for transfer in to our PhD program. And I've learned over the years, and I've done this for years, is to look at, okay, not only the title of the course, but tell me the textbook.
And staff they do look at the textbook also.
Okay,
They do look
good.
at that section.
That comes into play quite often with the second psychopathology course.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, sometimes they want to stretch for something. I'm like, does it have the DSM-5? Then sure. If not, no. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Amuna.
I just wanted to provide a point of clarification for Janie. When I mentioned the basic training, it is our foundation as far as professional orientation, but I was saying that as squeamish as it makes me to have it move down, that I have solace and relief and comfort in moving forward with the way that it's written today because of Practum, because of supervision, because there's still other barriers that they would have to go through and good barriers to make sure that they've had contact with someone on what a counselor looks like. And so I just wanted to clarify, it is a basic training for me, but it doesn't end there for us. It's not the last realm. So I'm comfortable moving forward today only because we're not also changing practicum. We're not changing supervision. We're not changing those practical application things that would make sure that they know what a professional looks like before they're fully into the field. You're muted, Dr. Taylor.
Frickin' dogs. Barking at everything, UPS guy, you name it. Yeah, I'd like to propose that we move forward with a motion, which I'm happy to make. And then if that fails, we can kind of continue discussion and try again. Is that agreeable?
Yeah, if there's no further discussion, if you want to make a motion, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to propose a motion to pass this adjustment to 681.83 as written.
Dr. Muna, is that a second?
That is a second.
The the motion is to pass the revisions to academic course content 681.83. This is important that we all get on the record, so please raise your hand so we can take an accurate vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And all opposed? Thank you. Patrick, could you give everybody just a brief description of where the process goes from this point, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Sure. Yeah, these 3 rules will then get sent to the Executive Council for proposal at their next meeting, and then if approved, they'll go to the Register for public comment. So, and then once they get published, they'll come back to this board to review any public comment that's made on those particular rules, and we can discuss them again further at that point.
Okay, just a rough idea on the time frame on that. I want people to know when they can make public comment.
Sure. I'm pulling up. I think the next council meeting is October 26th, I think.
You're correct.
Is that right?
You're correct.
Okay, and so, I mean, I'm guessing it would probably get published in the Register in November, probably sometime in November. Does that sound about right, Brenda?
It'll depend on when the governor's review gets complete with it after we, if the council votes to propose it, I've got to send it over to the governor's office for review.
Yeah.
So maybe not until the beginning of December.
I would say probably sometime around the 1st of December would be a safer bet.
All right, thank you, everybody. Good work there. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll meet back here and get started on 8B. See y'all in just a minute.
Mr. Chair, do you want to say how long? Is it just 5 minutes? 5 minutes, okay.
Christina, if you can pause the recording during the break.
Board members, if you guys are around, if we can jump back on and continue on with the meeting, that would be great.
Vanessa, I hadn't had a chance to say hi to you. Thanks for being here today.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, we are just waiting on Dr. Bradley. And
We do have a quorum if you would like to. So.
there she is.
I'm sorry, I'm here. I just had not turned off my video or turned on my video. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Our next agenda item is 8B. This is a review of the following proposed rule changes. All of these were approved by BHEC. They are now being sent to the Texas Register, at which point we will receive public comment on it. There's nothing that we have to do, but we just did want to update you on where things stood. Okay, 8C, review of the following withdrawn rule changes. Again, there's nothing that we have to do. These have been removed. I don't, Patrick, was there a?
So, yeah, what the explanation why they were withdrawn is that there were 2 proposed rules that got sent up, and two previously that were being proposed. The Register won't let us have 2 versions of the same rule out for proposal. So what we had to do with these 2 particular rules is you'll notice that they 681.2 and 681.93 are in the ones that went for proposal. Those exact same changes were combined with the other changes, so they're being re-proposed with both changes so that they can comment again on them if someone would like to. so that we have the one version of the rule out for proposal, because you can't have that too. I hope, does that hopefully clear it up? No, all the same changes are still being proposed, though, that had previously gone through the board and the council.
Right, there's nothing, there's no shenanigans going on here. We're just trying to do everything by the book. And that's the explanation for that. 8D.
Oh, wait, before we go on, and I don't know Christina, Patrick, Darrell, but on page 599M, and it's talking about LPC associate must not represent him. It says, I think it's just a typo. It says where the LPA associate name appears.
Ms. Stoffel, which rule are you talking about? Sorry.
Yes, sir. So I'm on page 599 of our full board packet. Let me go up. So rule 68191 LPC associate license proposed amendment under 68191M, the new M. Bottom of page 599. LPC associate must not represent himself or herself as an independent practitioner. The LPC associate's name must be followed by a statement such as supervised by, name of supervisor, so on and so forth. This disclosure must appear on all marketing materials, billing documents, practice-related forms and documents. It says where the LPA associate's name appears. I think it's just a typo.
Right. Okay. I see exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
But there's an LPA license, so.
Okay. Right. I think that we can change that when it comes back through, as that's it would be a non-substantive.
We can get that changed. It hasn't even gone to the register yet. I've just sent it over to the governor's office for review, so we can catch that before it even goes to the register.
Thank you, Ms. Stubblefield.
Thanks, Danny. So now we go ahead and move on to D. I think Patrick and Christina are going to kind of trade off on this, walk us through these changes. Some of them pretty straightforward. Some of them will have a little bit debate. But starting with I 681.41, ethical requirements.
Yes, so for 681.41, what's being proposed is related to letter D, where we're removing that immediate language and just keeping it as reasonable action. I think there was a public comment on this specific rule as well, which should be in y'all's board packet. And I'm trying to get the link with all of the pages on it. I'm trying to get that open, but it is in your the link that I sent you by email as well.
And I think, Christina, if you want me to jump in, I think the commenter was agreed with the recommended change about taking immediate out of subsection D. I think the commenter was also asking to take the immediate also out of subsection C, which is a little bit of a different issue. The D is talking about more of a broader issues come up and then taking reasonable actions to correct them, such as somebody has a advertisement that the licensee never contacted that particular person and is never authorized them to publish that sort of stuff. And they would still need to take reasonable action to, it says that they have all these degrees or credentials that aren't necessarily true, like some sort of listing. They still need to take action to correct that, but they're taking out the immediate part. C is more of the, you're dealing with a client, and that's where there's the immediate and reasonable. So, and that's what the commenter is suggesting a change on. But the reason for subsection D is that was something that went through the governor's office review, and they had recommended that change in subsection D. They did not recommend the change in subsection C, though.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Are we going to vote on these individually?
It could be best if you guys want to, that's up to you guys. It may be easier if there's issues with any of the other rules, but it's up to you all.
Let's do them individually in case that we do end up with some dispute. Yes, Janie?
I move that we accept the proposed change on Rule 681-41 to strike immediate and from subsection D.
Very thorough. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. All in favor, just raise your hand. Motion passes. Thank you. Let's move on to 2I 681.72, required application materials.
Okay, so for 681.72, this amendment was, will allow applicants to qualify for licensure regardless of when the application exam was passed, the national exam was passed. Also to remove subsection F related to the substantial equivalency to meeting Texas standards.
Help me understand.
See, where is it?
Why are we striking F? I don't understand why we're.
This is when it came from the governor's office. They had an issue with we had the debate over substantially equivalent. They said it was not necessary. Am I correct on that, Patrick?
That generally sums it up correct. Yeah, they had issue with the idea that if it meets or exceeds, it's not necessarily substantially equivalent. It either is or it's actually above. Substantially equivalent is more of an analysis to see are the two equivalent. If we're saying it meets or exceeds it, it already meets it. So it's not really a substantial equivalency. It's actually a meeting of the requirement. So it took issue with the actual wording of F. And so that's why they wanted that. They recommended it being stricken out. I don't think deleting F is going to negatively affect applicants if that's a concern.
I took it as it was just recommended to reduce or eliminate possible ambiguity.
Correct.
Any discussion?
So the substantially equivalent, I'm clear on that part. Go back to we're no longer having, they must pass the NCE within 5 years. Is that what you said, Christina?
Any applicant who, regardless of when they took the exam, they will be able to apply for licensure. And Daryl, I believe, is this related to someone for reinstatement?
Where are we looking at in the rule right now?
I think all we're really changing is F. I don't know. That might be there, Christina.
Yeah, okay. I remember we had talked about that, but no, that change is not in play in this rule.
I didn't see it. I don't.
It wasn't either. So.
Okay, so then for 681.72, it's just related to removing F as in Frank.
Correct.
Okay, but in the comment, it does say the adopted change will allow applicants with passing scores on the NCE or NCM HCE to qualify for licensure regardless of when the applicant passed the examination. So it does have that in the comment, but in the rule, it's not stricken.
Yeah, we need to correct that. I don't know why it says it. I apologize. I'm not really sure where that came from, to be honest.
The comment is a holdover. It shouldn't be in there. Originally, when this came to y'all for proposal, we gave you the wrong version that had some language in it that talked about the 5-year provision on the exam. Mm-hmm. And when we stripped it out to go up to the council, we must have left it in the comment in there. Okay. So that's why you're seeing it in there.
Okay, so the comment is not what we're voting on. The rules.
No, ma'am.
Got it.
That's just a screw up on our part.
Just the part where it says additionally it removes subsection F. So that first sentence should be stricken out.
Okay, if there's no discussion, do I have a motion? Okay, Dr. Muna has made the motion that we adopt the change as written. Do I have a second? Okay, Brenda, thank you for the second. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Before we move on, I would like to note for the record that absolutely nothing gets by Janie Stubblefield. So before you try anything.
I wish that were true.
Janie, you're finding all kind. I mean that as a compliment. Believe me, we do appreciate it. I'm just kidding around with you, but
I know, Dr. Mr. Chair Halper.
You are showing the public that we give all these things a fine-tooth comb.
And I hope they all understand that the document sent to us is 666 pages.
Yeah, that's a little odd. 600, I don't know why we couldn't have one more page.
I know, could somebody just like add a page?
Okay, moving on. 3I 68173, the application for art therapy specialty designation.
Yes, and this one here is just related to B under 681.73 due to the American Art Therapy Association being replaced with that accrediting body. So it was just that one. We're just adding or its successor.
Yeah, this one, this is not the definition change.
Correct.
This is, we are just clarifying that we will accept the successor organization if there
Correct.
is one.
That is correct.
For the American Art Therapy.
The problem is that association is named in the statute. And we've been notified that that association will be no more at some point in the near future. And so we're married to it though by statute. So we've got to try to plan for whoever takes over. That's what we're trying to do here. Otherwise, it'll just be an all stop. Nobody will be able to use that particular rule.
It's a proactive change. We're getting out ahead of it. Any comment, any discussion?
No discussion. So move that we accept the change to Rule 681.73.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. All in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye. Thank you. 681.82 academic requirements.
Okay, for this one here, for 681.82A2, 1 and 2, we're clarifying that it's counseling or counseling related. Previously, it was just saying counseling related. So we clarified that. And then in C, we have so it's an applicant who held a full active LPC in good standing. We added that. And then if the applicant can demonstrate 3,000 hours of supervised experience and has completed at least 48 semester hours of coursework in a graduate degree program in a counseling or counseling related field with 300 hours of supervised practicum. So basically here, we're just trying to streamline the application process for the qualified out-of-state individuals.
And the reason for the wording change in C is because those are statutory. That's exactly from what's in the statute, the minimum in the statute.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved. I'll be as thorough. I move that we accept the changes to Rule 681.82, adding the counseling or, and then clarifying.
Okay.
A second.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Passes. 681.114, military licensing.
Okay, this one here for 681.114, the amendments is to determine substantial equivalency for out-of-state licensees that are military service members, military veterans, or military spouses. This had quite a bit of different different changes. Would you guys like me to go through them all? I think you guys have had maybe a couple. You want me to go ahead and read each of them? Okay. So first, it's going to be under B. We are adding substantial equivalency determination in accordance with 55.004 of the Occupations Code. The licensing requirements for a license to practice professional counseling in another jurisdiction will be considered substantially equivalent to Texas requirements if the following criteria are met. So first, it's going to be that the applicant has been fully licensed to practice professional counseling for the 2 years immediately preceding the date the application was received. And for number 2, has no disciplinary history. So that's under B. And that is all new language. We're going to remove the language there related to match or exceed the Texas requirements. We're going to add a new language under C. If an applicant has been fully licensed to practice professional counseling in another United States jurisdiction for less than 2 years immediately preceding the date the application is received and has no disciplinary history, staff may grant 125 hours of credit for every month of independent professional counseling practice towards any deficit in the experience requirements.
And if I can give a little bit of a detail on this as well, if you don't mind, Christina. So what we did here is something that's similar that we did with MFT. And so one of the issues why we're repealing B is B was just so broad, it's really not that helpful. And it goes back to the same sort of language that we repealed from that subsection F that we discussed previously, where if it meets or exceeds, it'll meet it. Chapter 55 of the Occupations Code is designed to try to create a little bit of an easier pathway or give military applicants a little bit of help to get licensed. And so we're required to sort of do sort of a substantial equivalency evaluation. And what subsection B and C do is that's what it is. If you've been licensed and in good standing for 2 years, you haven't gotten in trouble, you're good. You can come in, you're fine. If it's less than 2 years, we can give you credit for that period of time. And so the math is 125 hours for each month. So you can count that up and see how short they are. If they're haven't done the full 2 years. And so I know there's a comment on subsection D that talks about what the part that's struck down there about holding a restricted license. Part of the comment says if this is somewhere else, then the commenter agreed with removing the language, but felt it was important to have there. My reading of 882.60, which needs to be used in combination with this, which is a BHEC rule, that does have that language in there. So it was my understanding is that was being struck because it was redundant. It was already in 882.60, which is also relates back to the military applicants.
Any discussion?
My discussion back on C, and I'm the granting the 125 hours. I understand that's a mathematical thing, but are we just splitting those 50-50 with direct and indirect on whatever they're deficient in?
Well, I think it would have to be determined at that particular time, but what we would do is it relates back to the subsection B where we're looking for the full 3,000 hours. And so you could count them up to that particular time, but we would probably have to parse those out. It'd be difficult to say which are direct and not direct. So we'd have to give credit. We'd have to give some credit. It's hard to write a rule that will apply and how you would do direct and indirect. And so this will at least give them an ability to give some credit, but I imagine this will have to go to staff and potentially an applications committee to say, what do we want to count for direct? What do we want to count for indirect? That sort of a thing. So it was hard to get too granular with this, but I get your point. I don't know that I have a better answer for you though.
And I just want to clarify that this is specifically for a military population and for those who are already licensed at the independent level in their state. So not LPC associate equivalent in another state. This is only for individuals licensed at the independent level full LPC. Is that correct?
Well, that's part of the substantial equivalency. I think they'd have to be licensed, fully licensed with 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, right?
Well, if we're giving them the experience hours, yes. I mean, they may come in still as an LPC associate if they don't have enough hours, but we're still granting them some of the hours. So they would still, be in that role as an associate to go towards the full licensure. Does that help? Okay.
It does.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Dr. Amuna. Do I have a second? Thank you,
Second.
Dr. Bradley. Okay, all in favor of the proposed change to 681-114 as written, please raise your hand. All in favor? Thank you. And last one, 681-205, the schedule of sanctions.
Okay. Let's see, so schedule of sanctions. Patrick, do you have the
Yeah.
number?
If you look at 41D, we took out immediate and, so this goes back to, since this is adopted, this will go out for adoption. Once it gets adopted, then we'll do the proposal to strip out all of this language in the middle. But this illustrates the point where every single time we're going to deal with a rule of practice, we're going to have to open this rule back up again and again. So I think 41D, you can see immediate and, as we voted previously, that one struck out. And I think there's a couple other ones in here where all it was to match that particular language. So that's the only thing that's changed here. Nothing substantive. We haven't made any changes to adopt a change to the actual recommended sanction. It's only just the parroting of the wording from the rules.
Thank you, Patrick.
Any questions or discussion? Okay. A motion?
I move that we accept the change to rules 681.205 regarding the language stricken from 681.41D and 681.93 A1B as written.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Dr. Mina, thank you. All in favor of the change, please raise your hand. And passes. Thank you. That concludes agenda item 8, rulemaking. We'll go ahead and move on. Number 9 is discussion and possible action concerning committee reports. A is the Rules Committee report. Rules Committee met a little over a week ago on September 1st. The majority, in fact, I think all of the discussion was concerning the proposed academic course work changes that we discussed earlier. We heard from staff. We trying to figure out a way to make suggested changes, make changes that will make this process better without sacrificing all of the protections to the public. That was the bulk of the discussion. Did anyone else want to add to it? We've already, everything we discussed kind of came out in our earlier rules discussion though. Janie, Chris, Brenda, anything to add? Okay. If you'll take a look, we have the next item under here is our, we have developed a guidelines for using social media that will apply to professional counselors. This was based on what was in place with the psychology board. It's here under Rules Committee. However, these are guidelines. That's an old joke that goes back to Pirates of the Caribbean. It's really more guidelines as opposed to rules. But when this was first brought to, I thought it was for the board, and it's not. This is for the board to, I thought I was going to get kicked off Facebook, but that's not the case. This is for us to share with Texas therapists to kind of offer a little bit of suggestions on how to handle social media. Christine, are we voting on this? Or it's just in place now?
Yeah, I don't think we need any votes,
No,
right?
we do need a vote on it. If you guys want
Sorry.
to adopt the policy, we can publish it on the website, but it won't be an official policy of the that the board issues until it's voted on and adopted. So, but again, it's only a policy. It's not you can't violate the policy. We're not going to cite people for not abiding by the policy. It's not a rule, but these are, if you follow the policy, these are the ways you're going to stay out of trouble. You won't come on our radar if you probably doing what this is suggesting.
Yeah, Patrick, that's a good way to put it. That this is in place to, in case you're wondering if I'm heading down the wrong path, I can go consult the guidelines and, oh, okay, then this is what they recommend. Danny, do you have something to add to that?
I mean, I'm trying to recall our discussion. It had more to do with, these are not going to be sanctionable items, but if we're following these, it'll help us from getting into the muddy water with sanctionable items.
Keeps the car out of the ditch.
Yeah, I view it as just kind of a helpful tool that we're putting out there. This is, carrot and stick kind of approach. This is all carrot. There's no stick to it. It's just the designed to offer some perspective from us. It came from psychology. Apparently, it's been successful with psychology, and so we tweaked it a little bit for us, but we took the bulk of it when it came down to it. Is there any discussion on the?
No, I just love this because
I view this as sort of a living document. We can come back and revise it if.
And it doesn't require council approval either. So it's just, we don't have, this doesn't have to follow that complicated rulemaking process. It's just whatever y'all say, it'll be posted on the website today.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's great because
If
it
you don't
also brings us in line with what some of our other mental health boards are doing as well. So it's exciting to kind of see us start to share those policies.
Is there any other discussion? This is one of those rare things that is all good, right? It's helpful. And there's no punishment, and we have to treasure these moments. All right. So I need a motion on adoption of the professional counselors guidelines for using social media. Dr. Muna, thank you. Do I have a second? Dr. Bradley, thank you. All in favor of adopting the guidelines for using social media policy, please raise your hand. And that passes. Thank you.
Can you just turn the volume down, or did it go down that down?
I don't think we touched anything.
Okay. Y'all can still hear us okay? We've lost a little bit of volume. Okay, thanks. Agenda item 10 is a board chair report. Our standing agenda item on the BHEC update was not on this agenda, so I incorporated it into my board chair report. So this is going to be a little bit of both. First thing, a little bit of disappointing news. A bill in the legislature that we supported ended up not passing and has not been picked up for any of the special sessions. This was a bill that approved, basically deemed 3,000 hours of credit for out-of-state therapists seeking licensure in Texas. It was a last-second calamity. That's unfortunate, but it is something that we hope will be picked up in the future. In the next legislative session, it was kind of added midway through the past session in the spring, but hopefully, since it did get so far, that it will start out as an item of consideration from the beginning of the session in the future. We'll kind of pay attention to it, but we'll keep our fingers crossed that it'll get across the finish line next session. Regarding BHEC, wanted you to know that LPC's proposed rule changes on the supervisor and associate relationship did pass. These are now going to be sent to the Texas Register. Just kind of keeping you apprised on where it stands in the process. The proposed rules now go to the Texas Register where they will be published, and we will receive public comment, and we'll take a look at the public comment on it. It's something that we'll be watching. However, the proposed change in definition to art therapy, that was withdrawn because we have discussed whether to add a different proposed definition change to art therapy. So that was not approved at the BHEC level. The new BHEC Standardization Committee, of which Dr. Taylor is a member of and representing us, with amazing speed, already presented and passed its first rule change. This was on requirements for complaints alleging violations on court-ordered therapy and parenting facilitator services. This was paid attention to by a lot of family law attorneys around the state. We've received comment from them on this. It's kind of a remarkably quick identification of an issue, a proposed rule, and a passage. Dr. Taylor, is there anything you wanted to add on that?
Not on that rule specifically, although I think that rule will do a lot of good for a lot of therapists that are in the forensic space, in the court-ordered space. I know a lot of therapists kind of typically work with great trepidation in that space because they're always worried about getting a complaint because of what they may or may not say in court. So I know that'll be great for a lot of therapists. It'll be great for kids. It'll be great for our citizens as well. Also in the committee, we're talking about a lot of great stuff coming out, like CEs and telehealth and all this other stuff to kind of get the four of us, as in line as we can be without stepping on each other's toes. So it's been a wonderful experience to kind of learn more about the other boards and professions and how they operate and why they choose to operate the way that they do. And so it's been a great experience.
Yeah, Dr. Taylor, thank you for participating on that committee. It's always risky to join a committee that doesn't have a designated end date. So we thank you for continuing to represent us in that.
Mm-hmm.
And board, if you have any recommendations for items that you think should be considered by the standardization committee, please let Dr. Taylor know. Like I said, it's kind of remarkable that we already are seeing a product come out of there, and it was a good change. Couple last things. First of all, Daryl has been putting together a customer service survey for BHEC, and there was a couple minor suggestions added to that, but look for that to be coming out. Feedback from the public on what we can do better, where we're doing really well. That's always good to hear. It's a good idea. So be watching for the BHEC customer service survey to be coming out. And finally, we discussed, I'm going to hand this over to Daryl, but based on an AG opinion that we got back regarding the non-discrimination policies and procedures that came out of the social work board, made it up to BHEC for consideration and was sent over to the AG's office. The AG sent back their opinion, and based on that opinion, we have ironed out the policies and procedures for all BHEC level groups, and Daryl's going to give us a little more insight on that.
Sure. And Chair Hallbauer, I'd had one more thing that y'all did up at BHEC is y'all gave me the green light on doing a workforce study, which I'm probably chest deep in right now. So we'll, once I get that kind of a polished draft, I'm going to bring that back to the council, let y'all look at it, give your input, and we're going to take it to the stakeholders, the state associations, get their input on it and kind of put it out for public comment. And then we're going to launch it. We're going to start gathering some data. It'll be something that both the agency, the board, the council, and then the associations and the public can use. It's not going to be, we have it, we won't share it type deal. So I think it'll be pretty useful. I hope it's pretty useful for us. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. But with regard to the AG opinion, Attorney General Paxton, long story short, Attorney General Paxton opined that the council does not have the authority to include the protected classes of gender identity, gender expression, disabilities, and I think there were maybe one or two others. You'll remember the issue came up about whether we had statutory authority to include certain protected categories of individuals when those categories were not named in our statute. And our rule was based more off of what we call our implied rulemaking authority. So we sought an attorney general opinion to see whether or not we had that authority. Paxton opined that we did not. I took that attorney general opinion back to the social work board because that is, if we're going to make a rule change on those particular rules, that's one of those rules that has to originate at the member board. Now, I'd like to reiterate here that the social work board has a very unique statute in that they have a statute that talks about anti-discrimination specifically. None of the other boards have that. So they already had an existing framework. But Paxton said you don't have the authority to include those other terms. We discussed the matter with the social work board, both in executive session and in open session. And the social work board voted not to make any changes to the rules. And the way the rule currently reads is it does contain those classes that Paxton said they do not have authority for. Now, remember, an attorney general opinion it's not binding. It's just considered persuasive authority. So the board, after discussions with us, felt like that, you know, we feel confident enough in our position. We want to leave those categories in. So those categories that's still the law. It always has been the law. And the council obviously is not going to make any changes on it. They voted not to take any other action. I don't even really think they can take any action on it. But so that issue is fully and finally resolved, I guess, unless we get sued. But I'm not hearing any rumblings or anything of that out in the world. So I think kind of all is quiet on the countryside in that particular regard right now. So that's where we're at on that. If you guys have any questions, I'll try and answer it.
All right. Thank you,
Is
Dale.
that what you were looking for, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I take, but yeah, I'm sorry. There was one other thing I forgot that I told you. When I was discussing with the social work board, and I also presented this statement to the council. One of the things that kind of helped us get to that point where we were comfortable with leaving those rule changes or those protected categories in the rule was the way that rule is worded. It talks about a provider cannot discriminate based exclusively or solely on gender identity, gender expression. And that's important. That very narrow classification is important because there was a case that just came out of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's Fulton versus City of Philadelphia. And in that case, the City of Philadelphia had basically stripped a Catholic adoption agency of its city contract to provide adoption certifications. The Catholic Church, this entity of the Catholic Church would go out, certify people as being basically fit to adopt kiddos. But what the city was trying to tell this adoption agency is look, you cannot discriminate against same-sex couples. And the adoption agency was saying, look, we don't have a problem certifying individuals who are gay, but you're asking us to put our stamp of approval upon same-sex marriage, and we cannot do that under the expression of our faith. That goes contrary to our religious practices and beliefs. Long story short, this goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, look, the days of discriminating against gays, transgender, and all these other classes that we see in the news so much, those days are over, folks. I mean, the Supreme Court has kind of said, we're not going to let that happen. But what the Supreme Court also went on to say is when those anti-discrimination protections bump up against the First Amendment and your right to express your religious beliefs, the First Amendment wins every time, all the time. So what that tells us is when we look at this social work board rule is we have to construe that very narrowly. And what I have told the social work board and what I told the council was, here's how we're going to operate this. we have a rule on the social work side that says thou shalt not discriminate against this list of protected classes. We are going to enforce that rule unless or until the licensee is, makes a good faith argument of, I can't see that individual, or I can't deliver service to that individual because it would violate my good faith or good, genuine exercise of religion. What we also have to keep in mind is we don't want that rule to operate in a manner that it would force licensees to practice outside their competency. And we have to keep that in mind, because if we put folks in a catch-22 like that, the very ethical codes that say thou shalt not discriminate also say thou shalt not practice outside your own competence or your wheelhouse. So what we really have here is kind of a limitation on those anti-discriminatory provisions. One, if it would cause you to violate the exercise of your religion, then that rule can't be enforced against you. Or two, if it's beyond your competency, and I mean, everybody has their little niche areas where they practice, and nobody's a true general practitioner. You do everything that walks through the door. So we have to keep that in mind, and that's something that I've instructed Patrick and the legal staff. Look, we can't be enforcing that rule against those particular individuals that have that type of a defense against that. And candidly, I don't know that we've ever received a complaint under that rule, and I don't know that we ever will, just because the very nature of the profession doesn't lend itself to folks engaging in discriminatory conduct. So I feel like probably if it ever does come before us, it won't be a discriminatory case. It'll be one where this is not my wheelhouse. I don't know what I'm doing with this population. I'm going to have to send you to somebody else that does. That's probably what we're more likely to see. But just kind of give you all a heads up, that was the balancing test that we did in coming up with how we would address it. So the rules are still on the books, but there are some limitations on the enforceability of those rules based upon the First Amendment and just your own ethical codes in the professions. You got to stay within your own competency. So that was rather more long-winded, I think, than what you were looking for, Chair Halbauer, but there it is.
To be honest, Daryl, that was perfect. Thank you. It was important to me that the board hear the details of that explanation from you. Thank you. Board, any questions for Daryl on this?
I was just going to say no question. Oh, were you speaking, Dr. Taylor? I apologize. So no questions, but I'm glad that this clarification is being made. Again, I'm in my 5 minutes of being on the board, being bombarded with calls and emails that social work no longer has to XYZ. And so just being able to have this explanation eventually put to rest would be nice.
That was the objective here.
You can always point them back to either the recording of the social work board meeting, the council meeting, or this one. I ought to have that speech rehearsed by now, but I don't.
I was told to just give them Dr. Taylor's cell phone number. That was the message today.
That works too.
Put it on a billboard. Put it on a billboard.
Thank you, Daryl. And that concludes my board chair report. I'll hand it over to Christina for our administrative report.
Yes. Okay. So currently LPC has 4 staff members. We have 1 new member who are learning the ropes and getting through it, but doing really, really well. Staff continue to answer phone calls and return phone calls once a week. They're rotating. And then the other days they're still processing the applications. So, we still are receiving a high volume of phone calls and emails. We thought it might help a little bit to have everything available online for the applications, and those processes are working very well to have all the applications online, but we are still continuing to get a very high volume of emails and phone calls. So to those of you out there, please be patient with us. They will give you a call back as quickly as they can, and thank you for your patience. One thing that I did want to share, I'm going to share my screen. I wanted to show everyone how to reach the board now. There's a new process, so give me just a sec. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So when you're on the main BHEC website, on the right-hand side at the very bottom, there's a contact us. And if you go here, it gives you the ability to send us your inquiry. You can also submit attachments on here. So if you're missing, if you have a deficiency and you're missing documents, this is how you should be submitting those. It goes by the program. If you're doing an open records, whatever the issue is, the topic is, it's all here available to you on the contact form. This helps streamline who from staff need to get this, this inquiry or the attachments to respond to a deficiency. So the processing time can go a little bit faster doing this process. Unless you're working with a staff member directly, you can continue to email with them, but we really want to try and use this contact form and have this process available for, it just makes it a lot easier for staff to know and respond to the inquiry faster. Okay. So that is something new. I know we're still working to try and get the contact us from the website. We're trying to get it to a little bit easier place, I think more in the front screen. So when you go to the BHEC website, it'll be right there and there's not so many steps to find it. But if you guys can, spread the word on how to get those inquiries to us and responding to deficiencies, that contact us form is where we need to be sending people and using from now on. So other than that, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, staff continue to work extremely hard. We do have that additional member. I appreciate the board members. Yes, you guys did receive a 666-page packet this time around. So I appreciate all the time and dedication you gave to the board and to the individuals who these rules and appeals relate to. So thank you.
Christina, are we complaining about 600 pages?
I don't know, are you?
I mean, I remember when it was like 6,000. We had I remember when the LSO guy knew me personally because he just delivered those giant packets that I then had to burn in a
Some of
furnace.
them were the actual boxes.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 of them for 1 case.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been there, done that.
I was going to say, yeah, at least it's not actual paper now.
Yeah.
So.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Christina, hats off to you and the staff. Great job.
Definitely, Christina and her staff do very good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. We'll go ahead and move forward to agenda item number 12, public comment.
Yes, and if we want to start with the one in person, yeah, that's this one.
Do we have a camera for them?
No, they don't have to be seen, just heard. So you can go ahead and jump on there for me. We're going, and I'm supposed to give this to you. This is the individual, and then he has 3 minutes to approach the board.
Okay.
Can you just say test for me?
Test.
Can you guys hear him?
You unmute him.
Hang
Hold
on
on,
just a
just a
second,
sec,
Mr.
Tommy.
I'm going to introduce you here.
Hold on just a sec, guys. Let me do one more thing. Sorry.
Patrick, will you keep time 2.5 minutes and then a 30-second warning for all public comment?
Is it under public?
Yeah, it's your PC.
He's under attendee.
I just raised my hand.
There it is.
Okay.
Where'd you go? You raised your hand, it went to the top. There we are. Okay.
We're good to go?
Can you say test one more time for me?
Test. Can you guys hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming through here.
Yeah, Chair, will you mute your speakers there? And I won't keep you behind you.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce him and then
Okay.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and move forward with agenda item 12, public comments. We do have 2 In person public comments, our first one is Mr. Zach Alexander. So Mr. Alexander, you have 3 minutes.
All right, well, first, allow me to just express my gratitude and appreciation for the members of the board and the work that you guys do protecting the public as well as protecting the integrity of our profession. I have been sitting over here just squirming in my seat with some of the discussion, wishing I could engage and add a little bit of thought to some of that. But if I have time at the end, I may come back and share some of that. But my main reason for being here today, back in late July, I had submitted some information through the online portal requesting a special dispensation regarding the ethical standard 681.41.m.2. What that section is that's the section that states that an LPC should not engage in a non-therapeutic relationship with any individual within 2 years. And the situation, I worked for a few months with a young man who is 16 now. And by the time that 2-year mark is up, he would be 18. And I was hoping to be able, with the board's special dispensation, to offer my home as a foster home for this young man. It was a short period of time that we worked together. He's been working with another counselor for the last few months. I realize that this is something that's probably not done a whole lot, recognizing that there is a rule about this and then requesting that special permission. I've included a copy of my request, and it has the full 9 steps of the Wellful decision-making model, ethical decision-making model that I use, and it kind of flows through the process of my thoughts with that. So having said that, if it's okay, I would just leave that paperwork with you guys. And then if y'all have further questions or, even decide to review that, I would be very appreciative, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. Okay, awesome. If I could jump back for a second to the discussion that you guys were making regarding the academic coursework. I just want to say thank y'all so much for really advocating for that professional identity component. I'm fairly new to an LPC in Texas, but I've been licensed in Tennessee for a few years. I've worked with counselor education up there. And one thought that I did have as y'all were talking about how without that course, you would still have the practicum and the internship. But I just want to kind of ask if it's someone coming from a related field, would their practicum and internship focus on that counselor identity, or would it focus on the social work, psychology, MFT? So I do want to just kind of throw that out there for thought. Thank y'all so much for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to address y'all today.
Anyone else on the Zoom? Sorry, guys. All right, can you hear me now? Okay.
Chair, we don't need you.
Anyone else on the Zoom meeting, if you would like to make public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand for me. Okay, we are going to start with Dr. Catherine Bacon.
Good morning, can you hear me okay?
Hold on just a sec.
Give us just a second, Dr. Bacon. We need to turn our volume back up.
Yes, sir, no problem.
All right, try it again, Dr. Bacon.
How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Hold on just a sec.
I cannot hear Dr. Bacon.
Okay, try it again one more time. I think we got it this time, Dr. Bacon.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sweet. I won't plug that cellular, company who has that great phrase. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today and represent the Texas Counseling Association. I am Dr. Catherine Bacon, your volunteer appointed liaison. TCA's mission is to lead, educate, and advocate for the advancement of the counseling profession, to increase access to professional counselors, and promote wellness. In the spirit of that mission, I'm excited to share Angela Bowles is here, learning the role of liaison, and will assume the role when my term has concluded in July. Yes, you heard that. For those board members who began your terms during the pandemic, I've not yet had the opportunity to meet you in person, and I hope that will change by the end of my term. Perhaps at the upcoming TCA Annual Professional Growth Conference scheduled for November 3rd through the 6th. As a reminder, the board's presentation is scheduled for that Friday, and myself and Angela will be moderating. It is always a well-attended and anticipated presentation, as it gives our members a great opportunity to learn and engage with the board. We hope as many board members as possible will attend. We also hope that the board will take advantage of the free exhibit space provided to the board by TCA. TCA does not support the proposed academic requirement changes to rules. The proposed rules will jeopardize Texas's ability to join the Counseling Compact by making 4 content areas optional requirements for licensure in Texas. Those 4 areas are group, research, career, and professional orientation. Making these courses optional for someone with a counseling-related degree places the public at risk because once licensed, providing group counseling and career counseling will be within their scope of practice. Further, making research optional dilutes the importance of providing evidence-based practice, which all Texans deserve to receive. Just as we in previous boards have advocated the importance of the LPC board being an independent board with regulatory authority, it's of parallel importance that LPCs in Texas receive graduate training in professional orientation. The Texas Counseling Association is honored to be a stakeholder and recognizes the value of increased access via the Zoom meetings have created for all stakeholders to engage the board. We also notice the decreased access to committee meetings and advocate for those meetings to be made available to the public. Such access will allow stakeholders to hear board discussions on such things as proposed rules, which then in turn helps stakeholders understand the rationale behind suggested changes and provides the public increased opportunity to provide public comment throughout the regulatory process. Another example is the Application and Supervision Issues Committee access, which provides such an opportunity for students, supervisors, and council educators. On a slightly tangential note, the change in the
Could she slow down just a little bit? I'm having trouble following. She's talking so quickly.
I have 3 minutes, Dr. Bradley. So removing those violations off the website, limits the ability for the public to have access, and as well a really important learning opportunity for students and professors. We continue to hear from our members they're experiencing challenges with having emails and phone calls answered by BHEC staff, and appreciate Christina showing us the contact form in the meeting today. Thank you for the opportunity to share their perspectives. We appreciate the work of the staff and recognize the board members' volunteer service to Texas and members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Baker, do you by chance have a written copy of that? It kind of sounded like you might have a written copy of that.
I do have a written copy. I time it out ahead of time to squeeze in those 3 minutes. I absolutely have.
Would you, we value you and TCA. Would you please submit that via email to Christina, and she can circulate that to us, please?
Absolutely, sir. No problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bacon. Okay, the next person that we have is Joel Carr, Dr. Joel Carr.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joel Carr, and wanted an opportunity, perhaps it's the right setting, to point out in our posted consolidated rules, section 681.31, page 82, number 18 of counseling methods, specifically crisis counseling. There seems to be some issue with that definition that's out of place. It currently reads, crisis counseling, which focuses on short-term counseling interventions to address immediate situations, including factors such as safety and immediate needs. Purpose of the subchapter is to set out the application procedures for examination and licensure as an LMFT and an LMFT associate. The board may be aware of that, but if not, perhaps it's worth taking a look at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Are you familiar with how to submit a request for a rule change?
No, sir.
Okay, if Christina can help you with the details on that, if you could submit that to us so we can look at that at our next committee meeting, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you.
May just be a typo in the PDF version of the rule book.
Problem.
All right. Okay, the next person we have is Angela Bowles.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Angela Bowles. I'm an LPC supervisor, and I am shadowing Catherine Bacon in the role of TCA liaison. In a time where academia is a business, I believe the board's mission to protect the public can only further be insulated by the continuing to require courses in group, research, career, and professional orientation. In fact, personally, I would prefer to see a few more added. I strongly believe that every Texan deserves the highest level of quality care possible and feel that education is the front line to promoting safer and stronger communities across Texas through professional counseling. Similarly, to help address our mental health workforce shortage, Texas's ability to join the counseling compact is very important, and we would lose that opportunity by making these 4 required courses per the compact optional for licensees. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide public comment, and thank you for your continued service to Texas.
Thank you. Okay, the next person we have is Dr. Greta Davis.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Dr. Greta Davis. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor here in Texas, and I'm also a counselor educator. And I do appreciate the opportunity to address the board today. And I'm commenting on the proposed curricular changes, which I also oppose. In listening to your dialogue, which was really helpful, it seems that the impetus for this discussion was based on difficulties associated with licensing people out of state or licensing people who have related degrees, and is not focused on ensuring minimum competencies for our profession. I recall one board member stating that we created these problems by changing the curricular requirements effective 2017. And so if you wanted to reverse these problems, you would then only require 1 ethics course instead of 2, 1 psychopathology course instead of 2, remove addiction counseling, and remove family therapy. And then we would be back to where we were before these changes were put in place. Instead, what you are proposing is to remove core curricular areas that undergird the profession of counseling and threaten the integrity of our ethical standards. As has been noted, KCREP sets minimum standards for the profession. I understand that Texas sets minimum standards for Texas, okay? But what I'm not sure of is why Texas would advocate to set minimum standards below that which is recognized as standard for the field. Again, as it has been noted, KCREP outlines 8 core competency areas, which include professional orientation, ethical practice, research and program evaluation, career development, and group counseling. The reason these are included in the core curricular areas is because professional orientation is essential. Professional counselors need to know how our profession is different from psychology, social work, and marriage and family therapy. Research and program evaluation is essential. Counselors need to have the skills to acquire information from peer-reviewed journal articles to ensure they are using evidence-based practices. How are they to do this if they do not understand research methodology and statistics? Career development is essential because our profession is differentiated from professions based on the medical model, focused on human growth and development, and it has long been recognized that the role of work in people's lives is universal and intersects with their overall mental health and well-being. If Texas adopts these standards, applicants would not be as prepared for their licensing exam. Applicants could essentially take an exam and try to obtain a degree without 4 of the core areas that are recognized for our profession. I understand staff are overwhelmed or are frustrated by the minimum requirements and the time it takes to review applications. However, the onus is on the applicant to demonstrate minimum competencies. What the board is deciding right now is what the board thinks should be minimum requirements for Texas, which is not consistent with minimum requirements for the profession at large. Out-of-state licensees or those with related degrees can pursue licenses available to them, the licensed psychological associate, licensed marriage and family therapy, or they can meet our minimum standards, which should include the KCREP 8 standards. So again, if the board wants to remove the requirements put in place in 2017, they can do that without threatening the core curricular areas for our profession. Thank you for your time.
Next person we have is Sandra Martin.
Good morning, and I still have 2 minutes for good morning left here. I realize that committee meetings don't have to be open to the public. And I'm not at all longing for days of getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to drive to Austin to be at a meeting that starts at 8:30 and goes for 2 or 3 days. And, I'm not looking forward to that. But I'm hearing the comments about the academic requirements. And I'm remembering that the thing that was good about the committee meetings was that we had that chance to see the committees at work. And there was a general understanding that the really hard work of the board is done in committees. And again, I'm not longing for a return of those days, but I do think that there was an understanding of the board that came in those 2 or 3 day meetings, being able to sit with the committees and listen, being able to talk with them in between the meetings. I think there was an understanding that came to the public of the hard labor that goes into these meetings. And I think had we been able to sit in the committee about the academic standards and revising or courses and revising those, I think had we listened to the hard work of that committee, we would have a better understanding at this point of what decisions were made, how they were made, and what we feel about those decisions. So I don't have a cure for that. I certainly don't want to cure it by having 2 and 3 days of getting up at 3 in the morning and going to committee meetings, 5 hours away. But I do think we need to kind of look at that. And I guess maybe the responsibility now lies on liaisons, which I am, of Christian Counselors of Texas, and I do speak for them. I think it lies with us to provide an understanding deeper than they can get in a board meeting. The only other answer I have is I understand we can give out Dr. Taylor's telephone number to anybody that has a question. So I'm kind of making a note of that. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all. I appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
And it looks like this is our last one. We have Mario De La Garza.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mario De La Garza. I'm the liaison to the LPC board for the Texas Association for Counselor Education and Supervision. Thank you so much for your work this morning and for the dialogue that we are privileged and are able to hear because we're able to attend these meetings. Christina, your work and the staff's work, we appreciate it so much. And the dialogue again that you all have in order to let us know what's going on behind these proposed rule changes. I would like to comment on counseling as a distinct profession because I believe that came up with the academic proposed amendments to the academic course content. I think counseling is a distinct profession, and I know that in counseling programs, we certainly infuse professional orientation throughout, and we focus on counseling in every single class. The discussion surrounding these counseling-related degrees and fields that are then trying to be licensed as counselors. I think it's important for us to continue to scrutinize and to look at those degrees more closely because they are not specifically for counseling. Dr. Taylor mentioned, well, I didn't know what I was going to do. But if someone is wanting to become a counselor, they need to meet these minimum requirements. So if you have these optional courses, and I'm looking at them right now on in my list or in the public packet, if I have a counselor, if I'm looking to go to a counselor and that counselor doesn't have research methods and a class in research, is that counselor able to look at statistics, at particular literature in the right way to provide competent counseling? If a counselor doesn't have couples marriage and family counseling, all counselors, whether they work with individuals or not, are going to work with people that are families, that are couples. And so they have to have these skills. By placing these courses in this optional section, although you may not be thinking this might happen, it puts them in this lesser category. And Dr. Taylor said, well, we're not changing this for people who come from counseling programs, right? But
30 seconds.
Thank you. But we as counselor education programs do look at what you put in the rules, and especially those that are non-K-CREP accredited, look for what you put in the rules in terms of guidance for what we should be providing in our counselor education programs. All right. It was also mentioned that people get their training in their clinical experiences, but I think that's backloading onto that clinical experience and putting too much responsibility on that. My timer just went off. I would just like to say too that I would advocate for an outline with the recorded minutes, because it's really hard for us to find where things are in the recordings. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Mario, I appreciate you as well. Just for clarity, these are proposed rules, so everyone is going to have the ability to comment on these in the register. We look forward to those comments. That's part of the process. As we propose rules, our minds are not necessarily made up. So I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say on this from all the associations and others, so that we can get that important data to make either adjustments or not move forward or move forward. So we appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Okay, it looks like we had one more, and that is Jan Fries.
Hi, this is Jan Fries. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Counseling Association. And I wasn't going to speak, but I knew you had a little bit of a hard time with Catherine's audio. And so I want to jump in on a couple of things. First and foremost, thank you very much for agreeing to present at the Professional Growth Conference in November. Look forward to seeing all of you there. As just a point, we haven't yet received your application for your complimentary exhibit space. That is hugely popular and a great opportunity. So I hope you'll be able to continue to do that this year. I also want to, I worked really hard with a whole bunch of other people so that we could create BHAC, so that we could establish some really good operating efficiencies. I'm a little bit concerned though, because I think that some of the efficiencies that are being put into place are having a chilling effect on transparency and interaction with the board. And I would agree with Sandra that the opportunity to at least know when committees are meeting and what the content of the committee work is going to be is very, very helpful to keep us on board, up to speed, and to have create those opportunities for effective stakeholder dialogue and input as you go through this process. I would also, I do appreciate that there's been a lot of efficiency in approving applications and so forth. I really want to request so strongly that you have your staff answer the phone more than one day a week. What happens when your staff doesn't answer the phone and when your staff doesn't respond to emails is that you are simply transferring the burden of that work, quite frankly, over to the Texas Counseling Association. Because when you don't answer, we get those calls. And in an effort to provide service and to advocate for the profession, I do as much research as I can to try to help people with that information. I think the new contact form is really effective, but you don't have it any place where it's easy for people to find. And that's a big challenge. So I totally understand and appreciate the gains that you've made, but I think let's not confuse efficiency with necessarily effectiveness, and with maintaining the transparency and access that we have always enjoyed with the public. So I think I'll just stop there. But again, I don't mean to diss the staff. I think the staff works really, really, really hard. But the LPC board is not the psychology board, you're not the social work board, you're not the MFT board. And in the creation of, thank you, in the creation of BHAC, you were always intended to maintain your autonomy. So align where you can, but let's maintain that autonomous protection of the counseling profession. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment? I see no phone
I
numbers.
don't know, as a board member, if I'm allowed to ask about the counseling compact, but I was surprised it wasn't discussed today.
Dr. Bradley, what about it specifically?
We can't
Well-
talk about anything that's not on the agenda, folks.
Okay. And I didn't realize it wasn't on the agenda. I thought it would be in the chair's report. And so I guess that's my error. I just wanted an update where we are.
We can add it to the future committee report.
My apologies, Dr. Bradley, but I didn't have anything to add to it on the council compact to my chair report. Am I allowed to say that, Daryl?
And Dr. Bradley,
Yes.
go ahead. Dr. Bradley, you can go ahead and email me and any board members if there's anything that you feel needs to be a topic to add to the agenda. You can send me that information. And, you know, if it's something that does need to be discussed or whatnot, we will go ahead and add it. But I will add this to the future agenda and we'll see what there is to report on it then.
That was going to be my question. I do want that on the agenda. I'd like to know if there's any change, what's Texas's stance. So if you put that, I'm just asking for an update as well as an overview on where Texas is with that compact, because I know 2 states, one for sure, and the other one is in process if it hasn't been approved as joining.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bradley.
Are there any other additional items for future meetings? Okay. 14, announcements. NBCC was back in August. Any update on that?
Dr. Taylor, do you want to add anything? Dr. Taylor did a presentation. He did an excellent job to represent Texas, and he told everybody all the other states just need to do what Texas does, but
They do. Yeah, no, it was a wonderful conference, NBC conference in Denver. A lot of great exchange of ideas, discussed a lot of wonderful things, including the compact. So I'm very excited to see. A lot of the other states are quite enamored with PHEC. They think it's one said it was a legislative miracle, which I agree with. So hopefully we'll kind of see this process replicated in other states as well. But yeah, it was a great conference. Wonderful time.
it's amazing. There's some states where the board members do the investigations. So
Yeah, that's Georgia, where they filmed The Walking Dead. So you can only imagine what's wrong with that state.
could you imagine?
Naturally chose it because of its background for a apocalyptic thriller. So.
PCA Professional Growth Conference is November 3rd through the 5th. We have a board presentation on the afternoon of the 5th. I think we're either at 12 or 1 o'clock. I'm planning to attend. I'm fine with as many people from the board wanting to join that presentation as is okay with TCA. I think they're okay with it. Dr. Taylor, you're going to be there, right?
Oh, you know it. I got like 4 booths, I think. Jan, how many booths do I have? You know, I got like too many booths.
If you are interested, though, just run it by me first. I just need to make sure that we don't have a possible quorum.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Good point. Our next full board meeting is 9 a.m., correct, on November 12th?
Yes.
And the Texas Conference, February of next year. Does anyone have anything to add to the calendar on that? Christina, any final words?
No, thank you all again for reviewing all the 666 pages. I appreciate it.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Dr. Taylor, thank you. And Janie with the second. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't even think we were supposed to vote on that, but okay. Thank you, everybody. Great work. Again, hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thank you all.